I feel so honored that you all have invited me back again this year, and it's really meaningful to be in a room surrounded by like-minded folks. And so for those of you who were here last year, I hope to continue the conversation. Some of the feedback I got was kind of continue that conversation of the symbiotic relationship we have with the more than human world. And then for those of you who did not get to be here last year, or for those of you who say, I don't really recall what you talked about, that's okay. This is a conversation you can dive right into. You don't need background information. It's really here to offer this foundational knowledge. So today we are going to explore our disconnection from nature, naming some of those influences, better understanding what we are up against in our bid to reconnect with nature. I'm going to walk you all through some sociological and biological theories about the importance of sustained connection with our Mother Earth, review some fascinating research outcomes that support those theories, so right, the proof of how nature heals and cares for us. Throughout our conversation, we are going to look at a few practices that you can bring into your own lives and the lives of those that you care for to really help bolster those relationships with the natural world. And because I misunderstood and had planned for a little bit longer of a conversation than I want to give you all today, right? Because we just don't have enough time to fit everything. Your handout does not follow along with this slideshow. Instead, it offers a number of practices that you all can take home with you and share with your loved ones and your communities about how to care for your physical and mental well-being after you leave here today. I know I like to leave trainings and lectures with like, but what do I do? And so this is the what do I do. So I want to start, let's see. Works great. All right, so I want to start with a brief statistic. If you all had to guess, somebody can shout out, what percentage of time is spent indoors for the average human in Western civilization? B is what folks are guessing. Let's see. 93% of time is spent indoors. 87% of our lives are spent inside buildings, and another 6% of our lives are spent in automobiles. That is only 7% of one's entire life spent outdoors, right? That's only 1/2 of one day per week outdoors. And most of that outdoors time for folks isn't even intentional. It's a byproduct of moving from one indoor space to another indoor space. And then, even when we are physically outdoors, how are we actually interacting with the place, right? So we can all acknowledge that we are disconnected. What leads us to disconnection, right? And so I've got some ideas. Oh, I have to press the button for every single one. I didn't program this correctly, so you'll just deal with me for just a moment. There, okay, the second one worked the way it was supposed to. So these are all kind of ways that we are disconnected, and I'll let you all just take a look at some of these ideas. And as you notice this, these are ways that we are disconnected not just from our natural world, but also, in large part, disconnected from ourselves and our communities. The human species, right, we are part of the natural world, and we are communal creatures. So, lots of barriers. There's lots of things up there, and I bet as you're looking at that, you're going, yep, that one checks me. That maybe not all of them, right, but a fair amount. And yet, what nature offers us in terms of creating safety, healing us, holding us, and caring for us is unmatchable in any other relationship. Eric Fromm and E.O. Wilson both describe biophilia as an innate tendency to seek connections from nature, an evolutionary adaptation to seek and know nature-inspired wellness. This means, right, what they would suggest is that our very DNA recognizes that we evolved alongside nature for 99% of humanity's existence, and that continued access to nature is integral in human development of mental and physical well-being. So we are going to look at research by Ulrich. He is what many folks call a pioneer of biophilic design. That is design with nature in mind. His research began in the 1980s and continues to be proven true to this day. So one of his first projects created this sense of stress in individuals by having people watch a stress-inducing video. And so that video induced this sympathetic nervous system response in the body. So that's increased heart rate, muscle tension, increased blood pressure, and self-reported stress experience. Right? So this is what many people experience regularly in their lives from work, relationships, economic concerns, etc. So he gets people stressed out. And then he had people watch videos of urban settings or natural areas. And he saw that those folks who watch videos of urban videos had very little change from the original stress response, while those who watch nature-based videos showed this marked shift towards a more positively toned emotional state, both as self-reported and those positive changes to those physiological markers. Researchers also noticed this sustained attention intake ability, and I just want to put a pin in that. We're going to talk about that more in just a little bit, but I think it's important to note that even in this old research, it shows up. So this first project he did was kind of the foundation for what we call the stress recovery theory. And this is a theory that proposes that experiencing time in nature can facilitate stress reduction and promote psychological restoration. While environments lacking natural elements can lead to continued stress and fatigue. So his most well-known and influential research is called View Through a Window May Influence Recovery from Surgery, right? That's the actual name of this research paper. And many of you have likely heard, if you were here last year, you heard me say this, that green spaces help people heal more quickly. Anybody heard that before? So we kind of know that, that's folk knowledge. Well, here's why, right? Ulrich is why we know this. So when folks are in a hospital, there's a lot of stressors. There's lack of control of movement, right? You're stuck in a hospital bed. There's difficulty in modulating noise. There's beeps. There's other people talking. There's nurses in the hallway. The body is experiencing pain likely or discomfort. And then, of course, the hospital food, right? And we know that stress impacts the body's ability to heal. And so Ulrich discovered that one way to reduce that stress is through observing natural areas. So he found that this activated a calming response to the nervous system. So some parts of the nervous system, some of those bodily responses, respond to stress. They calmed within 20 seconds of visual access, and some of them took about 5 minutes of visual access, so after 5 minutes of seeing this visual stimulation. And what we saw was heightened positive feelings, reduced negative emotions, including anger and fear, which occur in hospital settings a lot, right? And then we also saw changes to those physiological systems, so that blood pressure and that muscle tension, et cetera. Ulrich also found a reduction of pain experiences. So this is due to this idea, this called distraction theory. So humans have a limited amount of conscious attention. Anybody who's ever talked to somebody who's also engaging in their phone would know. How many of you have talked to somebody and all of a sudden you're like, you're not even listening to me, right? They're just scrolling on their phone. So we have this finite amount of attention, and pain takes conscious attention. But access to nature offers this restorative quality to our attention and distracts away from pain. It kind of closes the brain's gateway, reducing those pain messages from reaching the brain. So Ulrich shows us all of this in this study he did in 1984. So he took patients who were recovering from the exact same abdominal surgery, and they had either windows looking at a grove of trees or windows looking at a brick wall. Those folks who were looking at trees required fewer narcotic doses of pain meds, reported better emotional well-being, so they themselves felt better, and they had shorter hospital stays. Further studies have yielded similar results over time, including with burn patients, those undergoing bronchiosurgeries, and women with cancer. When we look at this visual, this is not yet a real hospital. This is simply an architecture firm designed this. But when we look at the backdrop of this slide, can you imagine if all care facilities looked like this, right? Had those views, what that might do to our ability to heal. So we also know that some of these studies looked at folks, compared folks looking at either art of either natural areas or art of abstract areas. And so some of these studies weren't just windows, they also were art looking at natural areas. And so based on some of these studies, we might think, oh, well, maybe showing any art might support patient recovery. And so Ulrich looked at that, and he found actually that abstract and ambiguous art actually aggravated patient stress levels. It increased their stress levels. And so he had this other arm of the study. So looking at one of these pieces of research where people were looking at pictures of natural places or looking at kind of these abstract, people were more significantly stressed than the control group, right, when they're looking at abstract art. So this really helps us hone in the importance of the natural elements of art and points to the importance of access to true natural spaces. Take a quick sip. So another theory to look at, attention restoration theory. This is a theory by Kaplan. When we look at this theory, he suggests that mental fatigue and concentration can be improved by time spent in nature. So we know that mental fatigue occurs during exertion of high effort energy. And so that includes what we would call reasonable effort-filled work. And that is something that's kind of what many people do when they go to work or when they're at home doing the dishes. It's reasonable effort-filled. It's sustained over a long period of time. We are able to pay attention to that over a longer period of time. And then we have high effortful work, which is really undesirable work. And that's work that feels really effortful even during these brief little periods of time. So both of those really fatigue the human brain. And then also fatigue happens during stressful situations, all of those situations that we've kind of talked about. So all of this, being able to have attention, requires this executive functioning skill called directed attention, sometimes called voluntary attention or conscious attention, as we were talking about when we were talking about pain, that conscious attention, that finite ability. So this is basically the ability to allow us to focus without distractions. Pain is one of those distractions. When this attention ability is working really well, we don't notice distractions. When it's not working really well, it becomes a lot more difficult to filter out these distractions. So I wanted to kind of set that stage. So looking back at Kaplan's theory, suggesting that time in nature restores our capacity for this direct attention. Multiple bodies of research has shown this to be true. So Kaplan, one of his practices, he compares a group's ability to complete cognitive tasks that required sustained attention. So one of those included kind of looking at specific numbers on a screen and sorting those numbers before and after exposure to outdoor access or other stimulus. Those exposed to the elements of the natural world, so walking in a park, for example, are more accurate and complete tasks at a quicker pace. It's suggested that this happens through this mechanism that Kaplan calls soft fascination. So that's kind of what this slide is showing us, this soft fascination. Nature provides us with a very gentle level of stimulation compared to the more intense types of stimulation that we find in outdoor urban environments. So external input like machinery, traffic noises, lots of hustle and bustle and the like. And then even indoor stimulation. So some of that urban noise still seeps in when we're indoors, but also there's a lot of task switching and external noises such as ticking clocks. For anybody who has ever been really bored at a task and that ticking clock drives you crazy, that's because your energy is really being seeped out, right? Technology-based sounds, so even the sound of the washer or the dryer or the laundry machine or the beeping of your computer. These are all kind of annoyances that start to take away that attention. And then also what some people call, we find indoors, that too quiet effect. Has anybody ever had trouble sleeping because it was too quiet? Maybe, right? And so basically, most noise, or lack thereof, right, when we're too insulated, humanity's only really been exposed to these experiences for the last 1% of humanity's existence. The other 99% of our species' existence, we've been surrounded entirely by natural noises, right? And so when we bring that biophilia hypothesis into this, it suggests that the passive noise of nature brings comfort in and of itself. This is supported by a plethora of apps which offer green noise, such as rain, ocean and water sound, bird sounds, wind, or fans, as some people like to sleep with. So these gentle, kind of unassuming levels of stimulation that nature offers, unlike that forced stimulation that much of our life asks us to pay attention to, this gentle stimulation allows our minds to be very passively engaged. You might hear it sometimes called effortless observation. So Kaplan has shown that this supports us in relaxation and actually helps us restore that attentional capacity, right? That finite ability for attention. And that was a side effect of the Ulrich research, right? He said, whoa, people can pay attention longer. That's not what we're looking at, but that's an interesting side effect. Kaplan said, I wonder why that is. Let's expand on it. So the next time that you find yourself being asked to complete a task and thinking, ugh, I just don't want to do this, right? Or you're trying to complete a task like getting your taxes done because that timing is coming up, and that ticking clock is annoying you and the people in the next, right? Maybe take a break for 20 minutes, walk outside in the woods, walk in a neighborhood green space, even just sitting and observing green space, which a sit spot is a really wonderful practice to do. That's going to really support you in rebuilding and restoring that attention. So we're going to dive back into focused research here in a little bit, but I want to kind of talk to you a little bit about some practices that are going to make accessing nature just a little bit more useful. It might serve you a little bit more. So when we talk about the idea of what is intention setting, you might ask, right? And it is a commitment. It is thinking ahead of time. What do you want the experience or the journey to be about? Acting mindfully with intention is a really valuable tool when it comes to nature connectedness. Your focus is in the moment. Who are you? What are you doing? Why are you doing it? So when we act mindlessly, right, or allow other thoughts to crowd our psyche, these practices that you all have on your handout and these practices that you might practice on your own, they're less effective. How many of you have been driving down the road, pull into your home, and go, did I even stop at any of the stoplights on my way home? Right? That's mindlessness. And we all do this, especially with habitualized behaviors. And so even behaviors that you think are supporting your connection to others or supporting your connection to the natural world might be clouded by mindlessness. So really trying to be intentionally, mindfully attentive. So a small practice. I'm just going to invite everybody to think about a time you've been out maybe camping for a few days, or maybe you've been sick in bed for a few days, basically a time when out of your norm you have not showered in a handful of days, right? So you're kind of maybe feeling a little icky, a little greasy haired, whatever that might be. So that first shower after having not showered for a while is glorious. It feels good. You notice the way the water falls on your hair. You notice the temperature. You're just so appreciative of it, right? But then, as it becomes more of a regular habit again, you're often standing in the water, thinking about your day, totally disconnected from the sensations. And that is how mindlessness works. It's how it creeps in. And I use this as an example to really showcase how mindless thought about bills, about work, about interpersonal relationships, whatever, right, can create a loss of intentionality that creates the space for connection, right? The intentionality is how we connect. So even if you're outdoors, even if being outdoors is part of your routine, if you are not intentionally in it and you're digging in the dirt, but you're actually thinking about how mad you are at your neighbor because they keep revving their engine or whatever it might be, you're not as connected as you could be. Okay, back to the research. Oh, went a little too far. I double pressed. So I want to chat with folks about this thing called awe. A number of researchers has been looking at this experience of awe in the last 20 years and really finding some fascinating results. Awe is this emotion outside of the big six. So for any of you who have kids or grandkids who have ever watched the Inside Out movie, you are aware of the big six emotions: disgust, sadness, anger, fear, happiness, and surprise. Dr. Keltner is a professor of psychology at the University of California and host of the Science of Happiness podcast. He explains that awe is kind of a more nuanced sensation, along with compassion, forgiveness, and humility. He describes these as emotional experiences that push us beyond self-interest and wire us for good. Cultivating awe is then this gift that we can offer ourselves and our communities. So we're going to define awe first. So when we look at the original derived word of awe, right, it means fright, terror, and pain, right? Something awful. But language has changed, as languages are wont to do. And we see the definition now kind of growing towards a feeling of reverential respect. So perhaps still maybe mixed with fear, but also now including wonder, right? So awesome. The dictionary would define awe as an overwhelming feeling of reverence, admiration, produced by that which is grand or sublime, something more than self. Awe is more likely to occur in places that have two key features, particularly outdoors, right? So that's one of the pieces, but physical vastness and novelty. So in Iowa, we might not have a lot of access to physical vastness, right? Because we can't really see from above. It's a lot of flatness, but novelty is kind of in the eye of the beholder. So what we can learn from this is that we can be intentional about how we are exploring spaces. So of course, go and explore a new park. Travel outside of your county and check out something, but also think, how might we bring in the child's eye view? How might a kid see this landscape? How do we look at it in a slightly different perspective than same old, same old? So exploring those little crevices and hidden spots of areas that we know really, really well. How expansive and vast might your garden be from an ant's eye view, right? So looking at things just in a slightly different perspective. We see people repeatedly emerging from these really awe-inspiring experiences less in their own ego state and more in a collective state of being. So now to the T-Rex picture that you all already saw. In the mid-2000s, Keltner did this really interesting experiment where he split a group in two. He had half the folks gaze at a huge skeleton of a T-Rex. They were asked to imagine it in its natural environment, in its heyday, the enormity of its roar and its power. Maybe some of you are recollecting a scene from Jurassic Park, right? And he had the other half of folks just look down a university hallway. When he asked people to describe themselves later, the folks who had interacted with the awe-inspiring T-Rex were 3 to 4 times more likely to describe themselves as part of a collective, I am part of the human species, as compared to more individualistic descriptions of self. In 2015, not that long ago, right? PIF shows us that experiencing awe makes us more compassionate through a series of studies. One of those studies had people viewing another grove of trees, right? A grove of eucalyptus trees or a concrete science building. So we're seeing a lot of these pieces of, we're looking at concrete, right? Technomass, or we're looking at biomass, actual natural pieces of the world. So he had folks looking at these two pieces, and then they staged an accident. And folks who had been engrossed in nature were more likely to intervene and provide assistance. PIF suggests that across all of these different elicitors of awe, almost all of them natural-based, though some awe can also come from witnessing other human beings do things we might deem as heroic, or kind or gentle. So watching other people care for one another can also be an experience of awe. If you've ever watched videos on YouTube and go, oh, that's beautiful, right? Seeing people respond after natural disasters and stuff can also be awe-inspiring. But across all of these different elicitors, he says people report feeling smaller and less self-important. They behaved in a more pro-social fashion. So awe really aspires this awareness of something greater than self. And often with it, transcendence of one's place in community, together with the human species, right, guiding this desire to act, leaning into those more nuanced emotional experiences, compassion, forgiveness, humility. In short, as Rachel Boyer would suggest, awe moves us from ego to eco. So I am going to invite you to practice these connectedness skills as we watch a video. So I am going to need technological help because unless this lets me actually click my link, I know that they tried the link, but is the computer actually over there? Tech guy, perfect. Thank you, tech guy. Bear with us just for a minute. So as we're getting this set up, kind of what this is asking you, right? Be intentional as you observe what we're about to watch. Is there a narrative that you notice? What are you noticing in your body? What emotions are being evoked? awe does not have to be grand in scale, right? It simply takes intentional observation of what's going on around us at any given time. So, when we think about how we might include this in our own lives, videos like this. So this is from the More Than Just Parks video series. So folks can find awe simply watching something that they might consider as awe-inspiring. Awe walks. There is a practice in your handout that is kind of an example of an awe walk and what that might look like. Revisiting prior experiences of awe through visualization, bringing yourself back to where you've been, and also awe narrative practices. And looking for the good in your own sphere, right? So one of the ways we know that we can be awe-inspired is to notice others putting good into this world and to participate ourselves in putting good into this world. But particularly the natural world tends to create the most awe for folks. So pulling up this previous slide, let's see. Right, these are all barriers to this disconnection. And so we really need to be intentional in our connection. Bill, I'm gonna ask you, how much time do we have left?
Well, 20 minutes.
Oh, great, then I've got plenty of time. So I am going to click through, let's see, okay. I really encourage everybody, check out biocubes.net. It is fascinating. So these cubes on the left, the kind of purple, green, brown, all the cubes on the left, these represent the biomass of the 6 biological kingdoms. So that is all of life on Earth is captured. That is the weight of all the life on Earth, gigatons, right? And then what you can see on biocubes.net is kind of starting at 1900 up through now, the growth of what we would call the technomass. So technomass is the impact and growth of human-made objects. So that's plastics, metals, bricks, asphalt, aggregate, concrete, and the like, right? And so at the year 1900, really not much of anything, right? And then we start to see it grow. And so if you look on the right side, this is the technomass. Technomass now outweighs the biomass on this planet by 200 gigatons, right? And I don't know about you, but I know what comes up for me when I see that and when I hear that, and it makes me pretty sad. And so what if we didn't shy away from the discomfort that causes? What if we recognized that that's not really sustainable for this planet that gives us everything that she offers us? So let's see. Oop, I'm going to go back into slide mode now. And I didn't point out, but that tiny little red cube in the middle is humans. So that tiny, tiny little red cube is humans. And that's a lot of bio and technomass, right? And that's a lot of technomass that tiny little humans have created against the backdrop of the rest of the world. Okay, so Paul Harvey reminds us of what truly sustains us as a species. And I'll just give you a moment to read that. And John Muir reminds us of our responsibilities to this world. And Chief Luther Standing Bear of the Ogallala Lakota reminds us of what his ancestors knew to be true. And so I have one more video to play for you all today. And this is a video where the national parks are kind of speaking to you, and they're really speaking on behalf of all natural areas. And then we're going to kind of talk about what capacities we have to offer ourselves as we care for the earth. .
remember a lifetime ago when we started this journey. We were inspired by each other to create something greater than ourselves and achieve so much together. A place to feel alive, to discover who we are, and ensure what always was will always be. Those days when we walked softly and honored our past, when he saved a nation and they saved the world. When he stood for this and she sat for that. When she captured our hearts and he captured our souls. When we were divided.
United 93, do you still hear Cleveland?
And we were united. He lifted our spirits. We aimed higher and never stopped looking up. But along the way, my roads grew old. My bridges shouldered years of weight. My trails became well-traveled. But my roots grow deeper. My branches extend further. I was there for them, and I'll be there for you. Will you be there for me?
So I leave folks with, thank you for pulling the PowerPoint back up. I was going to walk away from that. Thank goodness for tech folks. I'll just leave you with a few ways that you can continue to allow this earth to tend to you. Right, this area, and I'm so sorry, I feel like this got a little louder as we were messing with stuff, so I let me know if I'm blowing your eardrums out. This planet gives us everything that our species needs to survive: clean air and water, nourishing food, awe and wonder, mental and physical well-being, and a reminder that we are something greater than ourselves. And so we have been, right, we are currently and always have been in this collaborative relationship with the land, that symbiosis. She tends to us, we tend to her. So I just want to leave you all with a few ideas of how you can show up and be there for the land, because she is always there for us. And then I finished a little earlier than I thought I needed to. But I'll kind of be around for this if folks have any questions, comments, and then a reminder that that handout that came in your packet includes a bunch of practices, kind of my favorite practices, that can help you as you maintain that connection, restore your energy, restore your psychological well-being, restore your mental capacities. So thank you all for your time today.